Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. What does the church actually teach about oral stimulation? If you've ever had questions about oral stimulation, what it is, what's allowed, and what's not, this is the episode for you. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, the sex and intimacy podcast for Catholic women. My name is Ellen Holloway, and I am a Catholic speaker and coach who specializes in sex and marital intimacy. And I am on a mission to help you actually enjoy and desire good, holy sex with your spouse. So today we are talking about oral stimulation, and this episode is actually a sister episode to episode 164 about manual stimulation. After that episode came out, I had so many people reaching out to me. Okay, babe, what is different about oral stimulation? So that's what we're covering today. It's just going to be quick and easy. So let's first talk about what is oral stimulation. What do I mean by oral stimulation? I mean one spouse using his or her mouth to stimulate the other spouse's genital area. So that might look like a man stimulating the woman's vulva area and the clitoral head with his lips or tongue. Or that could look like the other way around, the woman stimulating the man's penis using her mouth, lips, tongue, etc. So the first thing that we need to talk about when it comes to oral stimulation is that no part of the body is unkissable. We know that our bodies are good. We are a body-soul union. God created every single part of our body, and that means that every single part of our body is good. So there's no untouchable part of our body, no unkissable part of our body. But there are some things that we do need to be aware of when it comes to oral stimulation, as well as just sex in general, foreplay in general, etc. So oral stimulation is a foreplay activity. Oral stimulation leads to intercourse. In order for a sexual act to be within the moral bounds of both the unitive and procreative meaning of the sexual act, that sexual act needs to include intercourse and male ejaculation during intercourse. That is because we need to allow for the procreative purpose that exists in the male ejaculation. Now, the male ejaculation is biologically, in 99.99% of men, biologically connected to the man's orgasm. So the man's orgasm then also needs to occur during intercourse. That is because they go together. We need, for the moral aspect, we need the ejaculation to happen during intercourse because we need the sperm to get into the vagina. That is what allows for the procreative purpose of sex. And because the male orgasm comes alongside ejaculation, his orgasm is going to happen during intercourse. The female orgasm is a little bit different. The female orgasm is actually not connected to the procreative purpose of sex, right? Sex can be procreative without a woman ever orgasming. I have talked to countless clients about how, maybe they're 20 years into marriage, they have 5 kids, but they've never experienced an orgasm. We know that the female orgasm is not connected to the procreative purpose, but that doesn't make it any less important. And when we look at the man's biology and how the two are connected, that actually tells us something about how important the orgasm is. Because if the male orgasm is connected to that procreative purpose, so we can't have a procreative act without the male sexual pleasure, then we know that sexual pleasure is very important to sex in general. And that means that it's really important for the couple to seek out both male and female sexual pleasure during sex. All right. So because the female orgasm isn't connected directly to that procreative purpose, but it is still vitally important within the entire context of sex, The orgasm kind of sits in that unitive area. So we have unity and procreation. These are the two inseparable meanings that Pope Paul VI kind of defined in Humanae Vitae, the two inseparable meanings of sex. Sex is unitive, it unites the spouses together, and it is procreative. Sex is how babies are made. So the sexual pleasure kind of sits in that unitive area. And so, it's kind of cool because we can look at the man's biology. We can look again at the fact that the ejaculation and the orgasm are connected. And so we can see the connection of that unitive and procreative elements of sex right there within how the man's body works. So that's actually really cool. But what we need to remember then is, they are connected. And so therefore, sexual pleasure of the woman isn't just like an afterthought. This is something that is important for women as well. All right. So the female orgasm actually then can happen at any point during the context of that full sexual act. So that means that the female orgasm can happen during foreplay, it can happen during intercourse, or it can happen directly after intercourse in optional kind of afterplay. And this all kind of depends on the couple, their routine, how the woman has had success finding sexual pleasure and orgasm. But morally speaking, the female orgasm can happen kind of anywhere within those bounds of a full sexual act. We'll get back to the episode in just a moment. Since you listen to this podcast, I'm going to assume you are someone who is interested in practical sex information with a solidly Catholic foundation. And I have a brand new guide just for you. It's called the Catholic Sex Positions Guide. It has over 50 positions with appropriate and simple illustrations, how-to, tips, and troubleshooting for every single position. And it includes answers to common questions about sex and intercourse from a solidly Catholic foundation. And there is a bonus foreplay guide included in the Catholic Sex Positions Guide. And this foreplay guide explains the why and the how behind foreplay and female arousal. Grab the PDF guide today at vinesinfullbloom.com/positionsguide or click the link in the show notes. So moving back to oral stimulation, that means that the female orgasm can absolutely happen from oral stimulation during foreplay. And then the couple can move on to intercourse. And that is a completely moral act. If we flip it and the man is experiencing orgasm from oral stimulation, that is when we get into the realm of an immoral act. Because the man's ejaculation needs to happen during intercourse to allow for the procreative purpose. Because if he is ejaculating anywhere else than inside of the vagina, then there is no procreative possibility. That's just ultimately what we're looking at, just from a purely moral standpoint. So, oral stimulation is absolutely okay toward the man, right? So the woman orally stimulating the man's penis, absolutely okay as a foreplay activity. But the couple needs to just be aware and communicate. If the man starts getting very close to orgasm and ejaculation, they need to move quickly into intercourse. So, to sum that all up, oral stimulation, wonderful, great. It actually can be a phenomenal way, particularly for arousing the woman. Oral stimulation is a lot gentler than manual stimulation typically, and oral stimulation naturally includes lubrication, aka saliva. And so it actually can be a phenomenal way of arousing the woman if that is something that a couple is interested in. It is completely okay for the woman's orgasm to happen during oral stimulation when that's happening during foreplay, and then the couple then moves on to intercourse. Oral stimulation of the man is completely okay as a foreplay activity prior to orgasm. It is totally okay as a way to arouse the man and get him ready for intercourse. This works particularly well if the woman actually experiences a much quicker arousal curve and the man needs a little bit more help. With couples that experience that, then oral stimulation of the man can be extremely helpful in those situations. But we just have to keep in mind that the man's orgasm, because it is connected to ejaculation, needs to happen during intercourse. He needs to ejaculate into the vagina. That's the main thing that we have to keep in mind here when it comes to oral stimulation. And then the last thing that I want to mention is just hygiene when it comes to oral stimulation is just make sure that everything is clean. Teeth brushing is important. Just make sure that your mouth is clean. The same goes for manual stimulation. Make sure your hands are clean. Make sure your fingernails are clipped. And then just being careful with use of teeth is absolutely okay, but make sure that you're communicating the pressure of biting and things like that. And so that there's no pain with sex, because we don't want any pain with sex. We shouldn't have any pain. And then of course, on the other side, the person who is being stimulated, just make sure that the entire area is clean. Maybe you could even shower beforehand or do a quick wipe down with a wet washcloth or something, just to, again, focus on cleanliness and hygiene. Thanks so much for listening. If you are not already following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you listen to podcasts on a platform that gives you the option to rate or review, we'd love for you to do that because it helps us spread the word about the podcast. If you ever have questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to us. We love to hear from you. You can reach out on Instagram or send us an email. Our email is in the show notes. Until next time.